For me, the practice of yoga is a way of coming home to my body. It's just coming home to a safe space inside myself and taking that knowledge base of how to sit with something that might be uncomfortable or might feel unusual, take that into my everyday situation so that I have a framework to work within. Like, I know what it feels like to be in a space of little bit of fear, but I can hold that in my body. I don't have to run from it.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. So welcome back to Successful with ADHD. Today, we have Sarah Platt-Finger, who is the director of Shobha Global and the co-founder of Ishta Yoga.
Ishta.
Yep. Thank you. On top of that, she has a newly released book called Living in the Light, which has been co-authored by Dr. Deepak Chopra and is currently one of the top 10 bestsellers on Amazon for the yoga books. That's what an amazing accomplishment.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And I know that you have helped develop one of the most renowned yoga teacher training programs in New York City, where I used to live, and expanded internationally worldwide to different countries. And you believe that practice of yoga on the mat is the reflection of the reality we create off the mat. And the deeper awareness of our physical, mental, and emotional patterns can bring us closer to the essence of our being. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. I know that we have been planning this for a while, so it's always so nice to finally meet. Those of you who are listening right now, you're probably thinking, okay, yeah, I've heard about this yoga thing, this meditation thing, and how does this relate to ADHD? So if it's okay with you, if we could kind of start there and then go into your book and talk about the principles and how that relates to our mindsets as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's dive right in.
Okay. So I know that Dr. Hallowell talks about the benefits of yoga and meditation for ADHD, the balance, the focused breathing. What have you seen in your practice as far as people who think differently using yoga and meditation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely, we know that what we do with our bodies or how we're organizing our body is directly related to our minds. And when we think about being mindful in our actions and mindful in our movements and mindful in the way that we're sitting, that's really what yoga asana is. It's being mindful in the way that you're holding yourself up and applying your mind, right, to your body. And because most of us throughout the day, myself included, we're not always conscious of the way we're sitting or conscious of the way that we're making a movement, right? These can feel involuntary, but because yoga is about conscious-based movements and practices, we can really start to harness the ability of our minds to be able to oversee our actions and the certain functions of our body. It's really something that ancient yogis were able to manage and operate. Our body temperature, our heart rate, how we breathe. These are all seemingly involuntary functions that through the practice of yoga, we start to make a little bit more voluntary or manageable. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Dr. Hallowell talked about a study that he did with 49 10-year-olds. And there was a group that did yoga and a group that did not. And it was yoga twice a week. And the ones who did yoga twice a week, I think it was after 8 weeks, they were able to control the default mode network in their brain, which is very glitchy for ADHDers and has those negative messages. So
a lot of it, it's about like managing your prefrontal cortex and the way that you are, developing those skills of communication and reflection. We talk about it in yoga in the terms of the chakra system, which is a subtle energetic system that really relates to the different glands in our body and the different functions in our body. And they're based on the elements.
Mm-hmm.
And, we talk about in yoga the third eye point, which is the point that relates to the hypothalamus in the brain. It's kind of like the overseer, right? It's the eye that can oversee all of the functions of our body, but also can kind of visualize and perceive things in a new way and ideate about things, but in a way that helps us to create new paradigm shifts. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a very powerful function. That's essentially, what these different functions in our brain are doing. And so when we're able to use this quality of focus and concentration to oversee, right? It's about overseeing, just like an executive in a board oversees the functioning
Yep.
of the organization. That part of our brain is overseeing the functions in our body and making sure that everything's cohesive and flowing as it's meant to. But we also then have an ability to oversee the way that we respond to situations, the way that we're participating in a process, right? Or following through on something. So it's very, very powerful to kind of be the overseer of your thoughts and your actions and essentially your life.
Being in control of all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if it's like, maybe you can't control the first thought that it comes up, but then you have this ability to oversee the next one that arises, right? So it's just strengthening that muscle, less of reactivity, right? Which I think relates to the default network systems of like just, you're defaulting back to a pattern or a way of being, but like shifting the way the neural functioning is firing in your brain. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's just about putting your body in a new position, right?
Right.
It's about standing differently. You stand differently and the neurons fire in a different way in your brain. It doesn't even necessarily mean having to, change all of these patterns all at once, but it's about being open to it.
Totally. I remember one of my friends who is a yoga instructor. She used to pressure me. She's like, "You got to do yoga." I said, "I don't want to do yoga. I like
Yeah.
hard workouts. And that,
Hmm.
what's yoga going to do for me? It's not burning the same type of calories and it's not strengthening." And boy, was I right.
Yeah, because you're using, if hopefully if you're really kind of approaching the practice in a holistic way, it's like you're accessing muscles that maybe you're not used to using.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's to me, the power of yoga is all about exploring the territory, that unexplored territory in your mind, in your consciousness, that has sort of been in the darkness, whether that's through a yoga pose or a meditation or a breath technique or a mudra, a hand gesture. All of this is ways for us to light up new neural pathways in our brain so we experience ourselves in the world in a new way.
Absolutely. The neural pathways are very often blocked for individuals with ADHD. The
Yeah.
synapses in our brain are not connecting like neurotypicals, and having that balanced movement, the coordination, the focused
Mm.
breathing, the deep belly breaths, all of those movements and breathing, they're all impacting our ability to focus and think
Yeah.
differently and be able to emotionally regulate in a different way than we
Mm.
do
Mhm.
typically. And so often when
Yeah.
people come to coaching, they're like, "I want the tools to help me be productive, organized. Where are the worksheets?"
Yeah. Bring it on.
Bring it on. Bring it on. Yep.
Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly. And if they don't have a calm nervous system, then I don't care what type of tools I give you, then nothing's going to work.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, we think that we often have this idea of focus and concentration as being something that we have to effort through. Like it involves effort to focus and concentrate. But actually, if you look back at the teachings of yoga, one of the limbs of yoga of concentration is called dharana, and it's a relaxed focus, right? It means like you have to calm your nervous system and relax in order to be able to focus and
Mm,
concentrate. And so it's a little bit of a misunderstanding of what it means to relax. It doesn't mean to necessarily check out, right? It means that we can fully absorb our senses into this experience that we're having. Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's
Because
very powerful.
we get sent messages all of the time, right? And usually they're
Yeah.
negative messages. And then with ADHD,
Yes.
we have even more of a negative sensitivity bias and we have to live with it. It's not getting rid of all of those negative messages, it's working
Mm,
with those and creating new
mm,
messages as well, for sure.
right. Exactly.
So tell me, you co-authored Living in the Light with Dr. Deepak Chopra. Tell me about that because I was going through the principles and they were so like they hit the nail on the head for all people, but especially for individuals with ADHD. What was the inspiration for it?
First of all, I'm so happy that you had that experience and that you felt that it was so applicable because that's really these wisdom teachings from Patanjali about 2,500 years ago or so that have been kind of passed down are meant to be very universal. It's not meant for a certain population or a certain body type or a certain background. It's like if you have a human nervous system, this
Right.
applies to you, right? Like it's that relevant. The book came about. I worked with Deepak for many years, shared the practice of yoga with him. He moved a few doors down from the yoga studio that I had at the time in downtown New York City. So we worked very closely together on harnessing and fine tuning his practice, his asana practice. That's really what I worked closely with him is
Hmm.
on the yoga poses, but not about the mastery of them, but in a way that was very integrated, that brought in this quality of the mind and breathing and visualization techniques. And I think over the course of several years, it really transformed his body and I think revitalized his relationship to the practice, both the physical and the subtle body practice. And I
Hmm.
think it kind of inspired this desire for him to write this book. And he invited me to be a part of it, which of course was
Sorry, twist my arm.
for me, right? Like, really? Let me
I
think
don't think
about it.
so.
Okay. And this is my first book, right? And it's his like 91st book. So it's a very different, place that we're coming from in this collaboration. But we really wanted to share yoga as a full spectrum. I often use the analogy of yoga is like this a rainbow, right? A spectrum of color, and each one of those colors is like the limb that we talk about, the limbs of yoga, and there's 8 of them. But we often when we hear about yoga really just thinking about the one limb of the yoga poses, the asana, and it's really just like one color of the rainbow, right? If
Hmm.
we just focus on green, like we're not getting all of the whole other spectrum of it in. And that's really what the practice of yoga is. It's a whole experience, mind, body, soul, essence that we culminate together and we tap into and we touch on a daily basis so that we can bring that light, right? The light of our essence, of our awareness, of our truth, bring that into every aspect of our living. And hopefully that's how we bring this knowledge and wisdom into our relationships and into our life and into our careers and everything else. But yeah,
Yes.
that's sort of the basis of it.
Well, it's interesting because nothing is black and white, right? And everything is a spectrum. Someone with ADHD,
Yeah.
what does an ADHDer look like? No, they're not always
Right.
hyperactive. Yoga is not just
Yeah.
doing like downward dog. There's so much
Yeah.
more to
Yeah.
everything. And once you can see a little bit clearer and you use the principles that are in your book, then you're able to take in a lot more and really feel it using all of your senses like you mentioned.
Yeah, and I really hope so. I hope that anybody who reads the book is able to digest it and make it accessible to themselves and wherever they are in their process, even if they've never experienced yoga or class before, if it's brand new to them. But this is how universal it is. I think the practice of yoga wasn't meant to be as kind of secular as it has become, in modern days. It's just the way that the conditioned mind works. We have a label, we have a class, and it sort of everything has to fit within a certain neat box or category. But to your point, for me, the practice of yoga is a way of coming home to my body. It's just coming home to a safe space inside myself and welcoming the whole range of feelings that come
Mm-hmm.
with experiencing a yoga posture and taking that knowledge base of how to sit with something that might be uncomfortable or might feel unusual, take that into my everyday situation so that I have a framework to work within. Like, I know what it feels like to be in a space of a little bit of fear, but I can hold that in my body. I don't have to run from it.
Yeah. So if someone's starting off and they haven't done yoga consistently or persistently in the past,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
how long does it take to reap the benefits?
I honestly, Brooke, I feel like it's instantaneous. If you can just like stand differently. If I were to say, like, if you're sitting, if you just like put your feet down on the floor and adjust your seat a little bit so you feel like you're sitting on your sitting bones and not slouching back onto your tailbone, and you start to use your abdominal muscles to hold up your spine, and you relax your shoulders, you just relax your jaw, and you feel your head and your neck easeful here, like automatically, right?
I'm about to
And
fall
then take
asleep.
a breath.
Right.
Maybe
We
we should
forget
go
to
too
breathe.
far.
Yeah.
But yeah, you like add a full breath into that. It's like you've recalibrated, you've reset, and you enter into a new space. You're now in a new moment, right? Where you can experience yourself and the world in a little bit of a different way. That doesn't take much, right? It's just we just changed the way we were sitting and experiencing our bodies. And that's really profound, to me. I think we sometimes set the bar really high with whether it's our yoga practice or any other kind of modality. We're starting, it's like, okay, we gotta, do it every day, an hour a day. And for me, it's like after, a couple decades of teaching this practice, it can be so subtle and it can be so simple. It's really about coming back to it on the daily,
Mm,
like daily having this relationship with your body and hopefully your breath, which brings us into a relationship to something more subtle.
yes. And having a relationship with that is so much more helpful than saying, yeah, I have to do it this way. Because
Yeah.
with ADHD, we have all or nothing mindsets very often. And a lot of us
Mm.
binge eat and we have restrictions
Hmm.
and, what we should be eating, what we shouldn't be eating should, and we should ourselves way too much.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
love how you just say, there's no amount of time you reap the benefits right away. And it's just noticing throughout the day. And it could be proactive, it could be
Yeah,
reactive, right?
exactly. And I think anyone who's gone through any kind of mental disability or mental health issue and is like, on a path of finding, reclaiming peace
Yeah.
inside of themselves, like I know in my own struggles, like it really just comes from that space of like just radical self-compassion. I'm stealing that from Lady Gaga, by the way. I think that was her. I think
I
she's
like her.
playing
We'll
that
take it.
radical self-compassion. It's like we put so much expectation on ourselves and as a result on each other for where we think we need to be. And if we can just like soften a little bit and really feel that softening in the yoga, right? In our bodies, it's like soften your shoulders, soften your jaw,
Oh,
even relaxing your joints, like your fingers and your elbows. Like there are certain things that when you soften in your joints, it actually simulates being back in the womb, right? It simulates this feeling of being in water and it relaxes us. So, just kind of coming back to, I do this for myself every day because I need that reminder every day. It's not that you just do it once and you're like, I'm
I'm
good.
cured.
It's,
I got
it's a
the tool.
it's a practice. Yeah, like anything, we just practice it every day and give ourselves like the grace to be like, this isn't about getting anywhere. This is actually about returning back. It's returning back to that home inside of ourselves that like we all can feel astrayed from.
Yeah. And you mentioned the womb and getting back to our home, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like treat yourself like a
Mm,
baby.
mm,
I have a
mm.
15-month-old, she naps, she
Oh,
eats well, she sleeps well, she feels
amazing.
love, she feels safety and security, I hope, I think. Why don't we treat ourselves that way? We forget all of that when we
Right.
become adults.
Right. We forget. And that's why having a child, a baby, whether it's, your own or a loved one's, that just kind of having that, even a pet, like having that reminder of tenderness. Like, what does it mean to be tender? We can do that. I think we can extend that to our children, our loved one, our pets, but it's really hard for us to do that for ourselves. And even the practice of yoga has become more of that kind of forceful thing. And look, I'm again about the spectrum of it. Sometimes I feel I need to like hold a pose for a really long time and like feel that heat come up and the strength that cultivates, and the like that fierceness of like, I can get through this. Like I am strong and I'm capable
Hmm.
and I have resilience, right? So we need to kind of recruit that every once in a while in the practice. So it's not always about just kind of laying down, but sometimes we need to give that to ourselves as well. You know what I mean? And so it's a very inclusive way of experiencing the practice, and that's how it has adapted over time for me and how I feel called to share it with others.
I love that too, because of course I got to bring it back to ADHD here. We have such a
Yeah,
hard time just being and
right.
initiating, and meditation is really hard for a lot of
Yeah.
individuals with ADHD, but you're getting that in a guided yoga practice, right?
That's right. It's a moving meditation. It's a form of meditation. You're just starting to bring your mind to different parts of the body. Even if you were to like stand and I would just say, okay, now bring your mind to the sensations you feel in your legs. That is a form of meditation because you're directing your mind to one thing, right? Or using your gaze, your drishti, as we call it, your direction to focus on, a part of the body. Rest your awareness over the right middle finger if you were to bring your arms wide and extend them out and like pause and reflect over the fingertips. That's a form of meditation. Notice your breath, the qualities of your breath. So these are all really great cues for people with ADHD, but everybody can use those
Yes.
helps right now we are all so distracted.
Oh my
We are all
gosh.
so restless. It's really hard for, I think, a lot of the population, and most certainly people with ADHD, but to do one thing at one time, you
It
know?
is so hard. That's when the DMN starts getting glitchy and
Yes.
it takes away from our focus. So if yoga and meditation can calm it and help you stay
Yeah.
focused, then that variable attention that we all have with, we all at this point have some sort of short or attention span because of social
Mm-hmm.
media, TV, everything is so much more fast paced.
Right.
When I was watching with my husband and my two stepsons, Family Matters the other day. Okay. That was one of our
Uh-huh.
favorite shows. They were like, what is
Yeah.
this? And even when I was watching it, I was like, this is funny, but it's not like fast enough.
Mm, yeah.
So we live in such a fast paced world with thousands of notifications a day. Like it's okay to have health and wellness. And I love how it's implemented more and more in schools and in professional settings as well.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that the landscape has changed so much since I did my training 20 years ago. It's now in schools, in community centers, in corporate environments, in churches, and just like religious places where people come together. It's really something that has become a universal way for us all to kind of, again, like get into our bodies and downregulate the nervous system a little bit and just regulate some of these everyday stressors that we are all experiencing. I think it's very uncommon for anybody in this day and age to not have a stressor that they're working
Oh
through.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. And when you were saying
Yeah.
relax your jaw, the last few days, my
Yeah.
jaw has been so tight. And I was thinking, do I need to get a new mouth guard? Like, what is happening here?
And it's, by the way, why I say that is because I need that reminder, like teachers, we teach what we need to hear.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah,
That's
it's
100%
really
true.
important.
100%. So I want to just highlight some of the principles that you mentioned in your book. So you talk about joy becoming the only measure of success and well-being. So with those
Yeah.
principles, like how do people get there?
One of my friends and colleagues, she said, the path to joy is joy. It's like we can't look to find joy somewhere else outside of us. It's something we just cultivate in this moment in what we're doing. It's something that we opt into. You opt into the experience of joy because it's there, because it's our nature and who we are. And it's choosing the things that feel good over the things that feel constraining, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And that's not to say that we don't effort through our days. We have our responsibilities and our obligations, and we have to pay our bills and take care
You
of
mean we have
ourselves
to
and
do
each other.
taxes?
That's the one. And I don't know yet if we can feel joy doing our taxes. We got to work on that.
And
But like,
laundry?
like taking a joyful approach in the actions, right? As we go through it, sometimes it means like, okay, I'm going to put, and that to me is self-care, by the way. It's like taking maybe the 10 minutes that you need before responding to emails, or like that walk outside for 10 or 15 minutes before sitting down and getting to the task at hand. And certainly
Absolutely.
for someone with ADHD to work through some of that stuff that you need to, if that's what helps you to sit and be still for an extended period of time. And
Yes.
really, it's about individuating too, like we all have our own process. And we have this sort of operational idea about how we have to get through the day and what the work day has to look like and what the weekend is supposed to look like. And it's really about finding your cadence and your rhythm, and owning that and feeling entitled to that, that it's like, this is the way I do it. This is the way it works for me. And this is where Deepak's work really comes in around your dharma, your life's purpose, which is a big part of what he teaches. But it's also,
Yes.
if we look through these principles in living in the light, a lot of it is about being in your truth. It's about having your clear boundaries. It's about not over
Committing.
indulging,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, not overcommitting, but also not overindulging in thoughts, emotions, conversations, relationships that are toxic,
Yeah.
And sometimes that means just like staying in your own lane.
Yes. And I think it's so hard for us because we are people pleasers to the core and we want to
Mm,
feel like everyone likes
yeah.
us. It's interesting you say this because I had someone reach out to me who I haven't spoken to in 5 years, and she was from my past. And
Mm,
it was like a dark time in my past. And now she has a
mm,
child. I have a child. Oh, we should get together. Nope. Right. Setting that
mm,
boundary that I don't think I could have done 5 years ago, not
right.
going through self development and understanding my life purpose and having that
Yeah.
calmer nervous system. So, do you think
Yes.
that with age, it gets easier too? Because I had just had a discovery call yesterday with a 20-year-old, and number one, and she reminded me of myself when I was 20. Like the number one
Yeah.
thing we have is FOMO with social media, with everything. Like she does not have JOMO, the joy of missing out. So,
Yes.
yes, yet,
Look at her
right? It's
dance.
the power of
Yes.
yet. But I
Yeah.
almost feel like the older you get, I know you can still challenge yourself with those negative thoughts, but I feel like it's easier because you've experienced so much.
I 100% agree. It's life. You can't put a value on life experience. But I also want to say, like, that's why having humility is so important, and like the openness to learn, to choose to see what are the lessons and blessings in every challenging
Yes,
situation. That's a choice that not every human being wants to take. Some
correct.
human beings want to be in a victim
Mentality.
based space and mentality. But for those of you, and I'm sure so many of your listeners, because they follow your work, they want to grow and to learn and to evolve. And, just like a big celebration for those people that are choosing that are choosing the work, that are choosing the growth, right, over the blame of other people. Even if we're talking about the blame, we're doing it in a constructive
Right.
environment where somebody is able to mirror and reflect back to you. This is another way of being. And so for the younger people to be able to have mentors and coaches and guides who can reflect back to them
Mm-hmm.
their their
What their own
beauty,
saying too. Like, so you're
Yes,
saying this.
exactly.
Do you believe that this is true? Does this hold up in the court of law? This is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yes. And I wish I had that as a
Me too.
young person and adult. I didn't, so like bravo to you for doing the work that you're doing, and all these
Thank
other
you.
people who, yeah, like showing
And
up
same to
in
you.
space. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I feel like we really have to celebrate each other and like the work that
Yes.
we are doing and light workers are doing to really help younger generations or anybody who's in that space of suffering to kind of see a new way, you
Yes.
know?
It's that growth mindset instead of the fixed mindset. Learning about the
Yes.
lessons learned and celebrating other people's wins, even if it doesn't directly relate to you. There's so much power in celebrating other people.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a form of receiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. So, Sarah, this was lovely. If anyone would like to read your book, maybe, I don't even know, do you do one on one yoga lessons at this point?
I do. Yeah. I do a few privates with people from like all over. kind of the world right now. But yeah, I'm doing that. I'm also in the process of building a yoga teacher training
Amazing.
with Deepak. Yeah, all of this is really exciting, and I feel very privileged to share about.
Yeah. So we're going to put in the show notes, but can you share with the listeners where they can find you and get more information if they're interested in learning about your book, learning about your practice, learning how to teach from your practice and Deepak's practice?
Yeah, so my website is sarahplattfinger.com, and that pretty much has all of my kind of workshops, trainings coming up, etc. And then mostly on Instagram at splattfinger, splatfinger. Same with Twitter, splatfinger, and on Facebook, Sarah Platt-Finger.
And that's with 2 T's for all of you listening.
Correct. Yep.
It's been a pleasure, Sarah. And I can just feel the calmness in our conversation. And I know that doesn't happen overnight. It was a lot of work, I'm sure, to get to where you are right now and to share your knowledge and energy with other people. So I appreciate you carving out that time and indulging in this podcast.
Was such a delight and such a pleasure to indulge in it. Truly, I thank you and your kindness and your generosity as well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.